We're learning the Gemara today in Yuma, the Fayin Ches Amud Aleph. We're a bit down in the Amud. The first word in the line is Minal. There's a few words here that begin in parentheses. Tainach Yom Kippurim Delekem Minal. Rashi takes out these words. So the Gemara before was discussing a person using a shoe, walking on Yom Kippur through the water. The question was whether walking in the water and getting the pleasure of the water is allowed in Yom Kippur. Here the Gemara discusses walking with shoes in water on Shabbos. Shabbos, the keminal mai. On Shabbos, when a person is using his shoes and is going through the water, is that allowed or not? So as Rashi explains, the Gemara's shaila is it allowed? Or do we say that we're concerned that maybe because of the water, it'll fall off his shoes and it'll come to carry it? So Nechemye, the son-in-law of the Nasi, said, Ano chazise Rabami verabasi. I saw both Rabami and Rabasi, the motu urkeme de maya. They came to a pool of water, vavru derech malbush, and they went through the pool of water wearing their shoes on Shabbos. So now Gemara says, Teinach minal. So this is an answer regarding shoes. Sandal maya kalamema. What's the halacha as far as wearing sandals? This is something looser, and there could be more of a concern that it could fall off. I saw Ravina passing through a pool of water wearing his garments, including sandals. Rashi argues and says, Sandal l'chatchila loy. Wearing sandals going through in water on Shabbos, chatchila you shouldn't, because it can't be tightened like shoes and it could fall off. Reish Galusa Ikla Lahagrunya. The Reish Galusa had come to the city of Agrunya, Lebei Rav Nosson, to the house of Rav Nosson. So Rafram, the Kula Rabbanon, Rafram and all the other Talmidei Chachamim, also Lepirka, came to hear his shiur. He was teaching Torah. Ravina Layasa. Ravina did not come. This was on Shabbos, and Ravina did not come join the shiur. Lamachar, the next day, Boy Rafram la fuke la Ravina midaite de Reish Galusa. So Rafram wanted to take out of the mind of the Reish Galusa any negative thoughts that he had about Ravina. Why did Ravina not show up to my shiur? So Amalei, so Rafram said to Ravina in the presence of the Reish Galusa, my time elayasa mar lepirka. Why didn't you come to the shiur? Amalei have a kovevli karoi. My foot was hurting me. So Rafram said to him, Baribayalach lemeisa misani. You should have put on shoes. So he answered him, Gaba de karahava. The top of my foot was hurting me, and I can't put on shoes. If I tied the shoes there, it's too tight and it would hurt me. So he persisted. Rav Ram said to him, why don't you put on sandals that are looser? There's a pool of water on the way, and I don't want to walk on Shabbos through the pool of water. So he said to him, why? You should walk through this pool of water dressed even with the sandals, even on Shabbos, it's allowed. So Ravina said to Rafram, do you not hold of this that Rav Rashi said, sandal that with sandals on Shabbos you should not walk through a pool of water? That's the reason why I didn't show up to the shiur. Coming back now to the halachas of Yom Kippur, the halacha that you're not allowed to wash or bathe on Shabbos. So Tani Yehuda bar Groigeres, Asa Leishe Valgabetina b'Yom Kippurim. You're not allowed to sit on mud that's wet, that gives you moisture and that gets some pleasure from it on Yom Kippur. Rav Yeshua ben Levi, what kind of a mud are we talking about? Ubetina mitpachas. If it's actually moist enough, it'll make you wet. Abaye, how wet does it have to be? It's so wet that it'll make something else wet, and that in turn will make yet something else wet. That's how wet it has to be, that you get pleasure of it, that you're not allowed to sit in it on Yom Kippur. Rav Yehuda, muter le'etztanim beperis. You're allowed to cool yourself off with fruits. Take cold fruits, put it on your body in any place, and cool yourself. Rav Yehuda mitztanim bekra. Rav Yehuda would cool himself off with kra, with cabbage, I believe it is. Rabbe mitztanen biyanuka. Rabbe would cool himself off with a baby that the body was cold, and he would cool himself off. Rave mitztanen bekosa de kaspe. Rave would use a silver becher to cool himself off with it. Rav Papa, so Rav Papa said about this, kosa de kaspe, The silver cup, the silver becher, malay, if it's full of water, then aser. You're not allowed to use it to cool yourself off, because it might spill and then you come to wash yourself. Chaser, if it's not totally full, shari, then it's allowed. You're not concerned that it's going to spill over. The pachra, if you have a earthenware vessel that has water inside, either way, whether it's full or it's not full, it's going to be forbidden. Mishom, the mishchol shachal, the nature of earthenware is that it absorbs the liquid and it comes out on the other side. Rav Papa or others are going to say here, Rav Ashi, Yuma, Rav Ashi said, Kosa, the kaspa, choser, a silver becher, even if it's not totally full, name yaser, it's also not allowed, mishum de mizdarev, because it's very slippery. It's very easy for it to spill on you. Zira bar Chama, ushpezichnen. So Zira bar Chama, he was the host for the Rabami, Rabasi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So he hosted all of these Amiraim, udukula Rabbanan de Kisri, and all the other Rabbanan of Kisri. Hava Amalele Rav Yosef, bereide Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. So Zira bar Chama said to Rav Yosef, the son of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Bar Aryeh, son of the lion, in other words, son of the great Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Ta emelach milse mal yese. Come, let me tell you a great thing to have avad avuch that your father did, that I saw something your father did. Mit pachas hoyeloi be'erev Yom Kippurim. He had a handkerchief on Erev Yom Kippur. B'sheira isa b'mayim, he would soak it in water. V'isa isa kemin the kalim the guvim, and then he would make it like a dry towel. In other words, he would dry it off as much as possible. Ulemachar mekaneach ba'panav yadav v'raglov. And on the next day, he would use it to wipe his face, his hands, and his feet. It was still a bit moist, and he would use it on Yom Kippur. Erev Tisha B'Av. How would he do on Erev Tisha B'Av, which is not as stringent and it's not menatayra? Shayra isa b'mayim. He would soak it in water, and then he would leave it until the next day. Ulemachar ma'avir al gabi. And then the next day, he would use it for his eyes to wash himself in the morning. Rabbi Bar Mari came and said, "Be'erev Tisha B'Av, mevi'in lemit pachas." On Erev Tisha B'Av, you can bring a towel, v'shayre isa b'mayim, soak it in water, manicha tachas mirashaysav, put it under your head. Ulamacha mekanech panav yadav v'raglov. In the morning, next day, you can use it to wipe your face, your hands, and your feet. Be'erev Yom Kippurim, mevi'in lemit pachas. On Erev Yom Kippur, you bring a towel, v'shayre isa b'mayim, and you soak it in water. V'isa kimin kalim the guvim, and you have to dry it off. Ulamacha mavir lagaviyenov, and for the next day you can use it to wipe off your eyes in the morning. Amal Rav Yaakov, Rav Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa. So Rav Yaakov said about this to Rav Yirmiyah bar Tachlifa, Ipche amritlan. You said that the opposite is true. That when it comes to Tisha B'Av, then you have to dry it off, and you can use it on Tisha B'Av. When it comes to Yom Kippur, you soak it before Yom Kippur. You don't have to dry it off, and you can use it the next morning. And we asked you the question, schita, that the issue on Yom Kippur is that it would be schita if you're not going to dry it off, and it's still going to be very wet the next morning, and you want to use it that way. There's an issue of schita, of squeezing out water, which is a malacha on Shabbos and on Yom Kippur. The Gemara now brings over here the questions that were asked to Rabbi Lazar. The first point is not relevant here directly to our sugya, but there was a few questions that was asked, and the next question will be a continuation of our sugya. So, Amar Rav Menashe bar Tachlifa, Amar Rav Amram, Amar Rabba bar Chana. Shalu Rabbi Lazar. Following question was asked of Rabbi Lazar. So, as an introduction, Rashi here brings the halacha that it says in Masechta Sanhedrin that in the times when the kohen receives a b'chayr, which has to be brought as a carbon on the mizbeach, but b'zman hazeh, when you can't bring it as a carbon, so what does the kohen do with the b'chayr? He has to take care of it and wait until it gets a mum. When it gets a mum, then he can use it for private use. So a kohen has to inspect it, or someone has to inspect it to see if it has a mum, so that he can use it privately for himself. So the halacha is that a chacham is not allowed on alone to go and inspect and see if it has a mum unless he first gets the permission from the nasi that gives him the okay, so to speak, the supervision or the okay that he can go ahead and do it. You have to get the permission from the nasi. Then he can go and inspect even his own b'chayr. A kohen can inspect his own b'chayr to see if it has a mum to use for himself. That's usually the halacha. So now, Rabbi Lazar was asked a question, Zakin v'yoshiv b'yeshivas. If you have a kohen that's a zakin, that's a Talmid Chacham, and he sits and learns in the yeshiva, tzarech litl reshus lahata b'chayris. Does he as well have to go and get permission from the nasi to be able to inspect the b'chayr to see if it has a mum or not? In other words, do we rely on him being a Talmid Chacham that he can go and do it without getting permission? The first way the Gemara says is that he as well has to go and get permission. Or he does not have to get permission. What's the basis of this question? Question is as follows. This subject, this thing of inspecting the Bechor to see if it has a mum or not, they gave it over to the Nasi in order that there should be something that the Nasi should get a special covet for this, that you have to come and get permission from him. So therefore the question is, Tzarech litla reshus, do you have to take reshus of him, even if you're a zaken and you're greater even than the Nasi, but nevertheless, this is something they gave to the Nasi, and you have to ask permission from him? Or perhaps, kivin the zaken v'yoshev b'yeshiva, ein tzarech. Since you're a Talmid Chacham and you're a zaken, you're learning in yeshiva, so in such a case, it's not required of you to go and get reshus from the Nasi. Omer Rab Tzadik ben Chalukah Raglov. So Tzadik ben Chalukah, when he heard this question, stood up on his feet. V'aman, he said, Ani reisi es Rabbi Yosi ben Zimra shezaken v'yeshiv b'yeshiva haya. I saw Rabbi Yosi ben Zimra that he was a zaken sitting in yeshiva. V'amad b'mayla mizkeina shalzeh, and he was on a much higher level than the grandfather of this individual that was the Nasi. V'nata reshus lahata b'chayris, and he went to get permission in order to be matter the b'chayr. So we see that even a person that's greater than the Nasi, sitting in yeshiva and he's learning Torah, nevertheless, he has to give the honor to the Nasi and ask him permission to go to inspect the Bechor for yourself. Amalei Rabbi said, no, lo yikach choya maisa. The way you reported it, that's not what happened. Elakach choya maisa. This is what happened. Rabbi Yosi ben Zimre kohen hoya. He who was a kohen. V'hachi kami boyele. This was the question that he had. Halache ke Rab Meir. Do we paskin like Rab Meir? What did Rab Meir say? The Amar Rab Meir said, "Hachoshud bedavar," a kohen that we suspect him of making a mum in order to be able to use the bechor for himself. And now the reason why a kohen would do that is because as long as the kohen has this bechor, and he can't bring it as a carbon today, and he can't eat it for himself as well, so he has to take care of it, he has to feed it, and so on, and it's costing him money. So there's a suspicion on this individual that he's going to make a mum to be able to use it for himself. He can't judge about this, he can't testify about this bechor or bechlal about any bechor if it has a mum or not. We don't trust him. So that's Reb Meir's opinion. For any bechor, for his own bechor, for someone else's bechor, we don't trust him for anything. Or perhaps halacha, Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, do we paskin like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel? Amar, he said, Nemanu al shel chaveirei. We do trust him even if we had a suspicion on him, but we do trust him for the bechor of his friend. But he's not trusted for his own. If it's his friend and it's not a financial loss to the kohen himself, a person doesn't sin for the purpose of his friend's financial loss. So for that we trust him. But for his own, for that we don't trust him. And they answered him that halacha Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, that we paskin like Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. That's the story with Rabbi Yosi ben Zimra, and not what Rab Tzadik ben Chalukah said before, that he has to go and take reshus from the Nasi. Now here comes the next question that they asked from Rabbi Lazar, which is relevant to our sugya. The other question they asked Rabbi Lazar was, Mao lotzeis besandal shel sham b'yom kippurim. Could you wear sandals made of sham, made of some kind of a reed on Yom Kippur? Is that also considered to be a shoe where the isser of neilas a sandal applies? Or no, this sham, these reeds is not a regular kind of shoe, and therefore you're allowed to walk out with it on Yom Kippur? So Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nechumia Raglov, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmeni, that is. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmeni got up on his feet, V'amar, and he said, Ani reisi es Rabbi Shua ben Levi sheyotza besandal shel sham b'yom kippurim. I saw Rabbi Shua ben Levi going out with these sandals made of these reeds on Yom Kippur. V'amin alei, and I asked Rabbi Shua ben Levi b'tainis tzibur mai. What's the halacha regarding this in the tainis tzibur, when you're fasting in a time when there was no rain and so on, and you're not allowed to wear shoes either? So you're allowed to wear these type of sandals and that time as well. Malay loishna. So you said there's no difference between Yom Kippur and a tiny sibur, and you're allowed. Rabbi Baba Chana. So Rabbi Baba Chana said, Ani reisi es Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Lazar, the min Ninveh sheyatza besandal shel sham. I saw Rabbi Lazar from Ninveh that went out with these sandals made from sham, from these reeds. The tiny sibur. I saw him in a tiny sibur. And I asked him the question in the reverse. Is the same applied to Yom Kippur that it would be allowed? And Amalei Loishna, and he answered the same answer, that it's no different between Yom Kippur or Tainis Sibur. These type of shoes made from reeds are allowed. Gemara asks similar questions. Rav Yehuda, or says a similar halacha. Rav Yehuda nafik b'dehitni. Rav Yehuda would use the sandals made from hitni. Rashi says also another kind of reed. Abaye nafak b'dehutzi. Abaye would use sandals made from hutzi, from branches from a palm tree. Rava nafik b'divli, made from kind of grass. Rabbe baravone korech sudra kare. He would tie a handkerchief to his feet. V'nafik, and that's how he went out. So basically, this is the source of the halacha that we have today, that only proper shoes made from leather is what's not allowed because of the issur of nilas hasandal or nilas haminal on Yom Kippur. But anything made of any of these other materials are allowed. Masiv Rami Bar Chama, so Rami Bar Chama asked on this. It says as follows: Hakiteya yoytze bekav shaloi. Kiteya, a person that has a leg amputated, is allowed to go out with prosthetics on Shabbos, Divrei Rab Meir. That's the opinion of Rab Meir. It's not considered to be carrying. This is the way he goes out, and it's allowed on Shabbos. Rabbi Yosi, Oyser. Rabbi Yosi, however, says, no, it's not allowed, because it's not considered to be a shoe, and it's not something that people always wear, so therefore it's not allowed. But then it says there, V'shavin, they both agree, Sha'atzer losses by b'yoyim kippurim, that you're allowed to go out with this on Yom Kippur. In other words, it's not an issue of Yom Kippur because of wearing a shoe. That's not an issue, so you're allowed. So what do you see over here? Even though this is not considered to be a shoe for Shabbos, right? So Rabbi Yosi says you're not allowed because it's not a regular shoe, so you don't wear it on Shabbos. It's like carrying. But nevertheless, for Yom Kippur, even something that's not the regular material of a shoe, and it's not a regular shoe, is forbidden. So going back to all the different kinds of materials for shoes that we spoke about before, from reeds, from grass, even though it's not a regular shoe, it should also not be allowed. That's the question. So the Gemara answers, Abaye Hossam the Ispe Kisisen. Over there, the issue with the prosthetics is not the fact that it's like a shoe. The issue is that in the top of these prosthetics, when it attaches to the foot, it has these materials, these rags that you place over there to make it soft for the foot, and the reason why it's not allowed is because of the pleasure that the person has from this, not because it's wearing a shoe. So Rav asked Abaye in his answer, if these prosthetics are not considered to be shoes, the fact that there's rags that they place there to make it soft for him, that makes it into a shoe. In other words, the whole issur is only if it's a shoe. If it's not a shoe, the fact that there's rags there it doesn't make it into a shoe. Void, another question, or others take out the word void. It's a continuation. Kol tainuk delav minalhu, any other kind of pleasure on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, it's a pleasure, but it's not shoes. Mi yaser, is it forbidden? On Yom Kippur, what's forbidden is pleasure, not just the pleasure of a shoe, that is, of wearing the shoes, not just any pleasure whatsoever. So the fact that there's rags there and it's pleasure, that's a problem. Rabbi Baravona have a korech sudra kare. Rabbi Baravona would wrap a handkerchief around his feet and v'nafik, and he went out that way because it's not a shoe, even though it's pleasure in that, but that's not an issue. Another thing, what did you Abaye say? That the problem is that there has the rags inside of these prosthetics. But diktani seifa, it says in the seifa of that Mishnah, im yeshloi beis kibbul, if these prosthetics have a place to put inside ksisin, these rags, then tame. Then it'll be tame. It's a kli kibbul, which makes it fit to become tame. That's the seifa of the Mishnah. So meklal, from this I see, the Reisha lav b'deisle kisisen. In the Reisha, it's speaking about these prosthetics that don't have a place to put any rags there to make it soft for his foot. So that can't be the reason why it's not allowed on Yom Kippur. So Rava gives a different answer. Alama Rava, so Rava says, La'olam, so the truth is, the kula alma minalhu. Over there in that case, regarding the prosthetics, which are made out of wood, that's considered to be like a shoe, and you're not allowed to wear it on Yom Kippur. Here, we're talking about these reeds and so on. It's different from wood. It's not the same thing. Can't compare these things, these shoes or sandals made out of reeds, to this wooden prosthetics. Now, what's the machlokes over there? On Shabbos, they had a machlokes. So, b'Shabbos, b'ha'pligi, the only reason to have a machlokes there is regarding Shabbos. What's their machlokes? Mar sava gazrina dilma mishtamet vasel asuya dal damis. So, Rabbi Yosi says that we're concerned that maybe the prosthetics will fall off and will come to carry it for Amos and Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. Umar Sava Rab Meir holds Lo Gazrinon. There's no Gezerah, we're not concerned, therefore we allow him to wear those prosthetics on Shabbos. Tana Rabbanon, we learned in Abraise, Tinoikais Mutarin Bekulon. Children are allowed with all of these things, all of the 5 Inuyim mentioned that you're not allowed to do in Yom Kippur. Chutz Minilas Sandal. Besides putting on the shoes. Not allowed to put on shoes for them. Why not? Maishna Nilas Sandal. Why are shoes different? The Amri Inchi of the Amri, because people are going to say Inchi of the Le. Older people put on the shoes for these children. That's what it looks like. So that's in other words, the point is that there's an issue of Marasayan, that it looks like people that are older went and dressed these children with these shoes, and it's not allowed. As Rashi here brings, when it says in the pasuk, Lahazi Gedailam Alaktanim, that even things that Ktanim, if they do it on their own, you don't have to stop them, but Gedailim are not allowed to go be a Dayim and do it for them. So in this case, if there are the 5 Yinuyim and Yom Kippur that are Asam and Atayra, so even if it doesn't apply to the Ketanim themselves, but the Gedailim are not allowed to dress them with these shoes. So if you see a child going out with shoes, it would look like his father, his mother put him on these shoes. That's why it's not allowed. If that's what your concern is, so sandal. Why are you saying that this is true only regarding shoes? The Amri Inchi of Dile, that people are going to say that someone put it on, an older person put it on for them. Hanach Nami, the other Inuyim as well, Amri Inchi of Dile. People also say that the older person put it on for them. So what's the difference? It should be the same with all the other 5 Inuyim. So the Gemara answers, no, it's not the same thing. If you see a child that's bathed nicely or that's anointed with oil, so then you'll aimer, what people will say is, Me'asmal of delay. That was done from yesterday, not today in Yom Kippur. So that's no concern that people will think that you did it for them. If so, sandal nami. If you dress them in their shoes, aimer, people will say, Me'asmal of delay. That yesterday these shoes were put on for them, not today. So that the Gemara says no, that people won't say that. Sandal lo efsher the me'asmal of delay. While you do sandals, it's you can't be that it was put on yesterday, and then the child wore it overnight. Shmuel, because Shmuel said, "Haiman the boy lemitem taime de misusa." If you want to taste the taste of death, l'sayim misani, wear your shoes, vilagani, and go to sleep that way. So you're not supposed to sleep with your shoes. So therefore, if someone sees a child wearing shoes, he'll think that his father or mother put him on the shoes today on Yom Kippur. That's the whole concern here. That someone's going to think that he put it on for him. But when it comes to the other things, rechitza and sicha, washing, bathing, anointing him, over there it says it's allowed. Meaning even if someone comes to ask on Yom Kippur itself, and you know that he's doing it on Yom Kippur, you're not thinking that he's doing it yesterday. He's going to be doing it right now. And nevertheless, it says that it's allowed. Why is that allowed on Yom Kippur? So therefore the Gemara now changes. It can't be that the difference over here is whether there's an issue of maras ayin or not, whether it could be done from yesterday or not. Ella, the difference here is as follows. Hanoch, when it comes to these, in other words, putting on the shoes or the sandals, the lav bisayu, this is not something that's important for their development, that they must wear shoes today. Gazri buhu rabbanon. Here the rabbanon decree that the children as well should not wear shoes in Yom Kippur. Hanach, the ribisayu, the other things though, whether it's washing them, anointing them, that it's part of their development, they need it, loy gazri bu rabbanon. Rabbanon did not make their gzeira, and it's allowed for children on Yom Kippur. Amr Abaye said, Amra li aim. My mother said to me, actually it wasn't his mother, it was the woman that raised him, and he refers to her as aim. Ribise di yenuke, to raise a child, how do you raise him? What is this for his development? What's necessary? Maya, chamimi, warm water, umishche, and oil as well. Godel purta, he grows a little bit older. Beise bekutche. What he needs is an egg with the kutach dip. Godel purta is a little bit older. Tvuri money. He needs broken dishes in order to play around with, in order to have something to break. Kiha, the Rabbe, Zavan lahu manig zizi de pachre lebnei. Rabbi bought for his children broken earthenware, in order for them to break. That children have to have something to break, have to have things that they can play around with and for their development. Going back to what it said in the Mishnah, Hamelech va'akala yirchetzu es peneim. A king and a kala can wash their face even on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara Mas Nisan Mani, who's the opinion of the Tanakama of our Mishnah that allows this? Rab Chananya ben Tradian, the Tanya, we learned in Abraisa, Hamelech va'akala. So in the Braisa, the Tanakama says that the Melech or Akala lo yichatzus p'neim should not wash their face in Yom Kippur. Reb Chananya ben Tradian says, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, HaMelech v'Akala yichatzus p'neim, a king and Akala could wash their face in Yom Kippur. HaChaya lo yitinol a sandal. The next halacha that we had as well in the Mishnah regarding a chaya should not, that's a woman that gave birth, so the Tanakama says that should not wear her shoes. Rab Chananya ben Tradian mishum Rabbi Eliezer, hachaya tinolus a sandal. That a chaya, woman that gave birth, should wear her shoes in Yom Kippur. So the Gemara now explains the source and the reason for their machlokes. My time in Melech, what's the reason why a Melech could wash himself in Yom Kippur? A king has to be seen in his beauty. Kala, my time, reason for a kala why she could wash her face. She should not become disgraceful in the eyes of her husband. Until when is she in the category of a kala? So you answer him, like we learned in the Braisa regarding a kala, that ain't meinen tachshitim in a kala. We don't hold back the jewelry from a kala. This is a kala that became an oval, but yet she's usually an oval that does not wear jewelry, but we don't hold back from a kala. Kol shloishim yom, for 30 days. So this is the source where we see that it's a kala, she's a kala for 30 days. So we said that a chaya wears the sandals because it's cold, that's the reason. And then Shmuel adds another halacha, im machmas sakonas akrav, if people are wearing shoes because there's a danger of a scorpion in that area, mutter, then it's allowed for anybody to wear shoes on Yom Kippur.